do have a quorum. Yep, we do have a quorum. I want to welcome everyone to our Utah State Board of Education legislative meeting, February 25th, 2021. So welcome. Want to welcome all those that are staff and educators and the public that are also joining us electronically. I hope all safe and well. First order of business here is a roll call. This will be so board members, if you're ready to turn your mics on, that'd be great. Vice Chair Belknap.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Vice Chair Davis.
Here.
Member Earl.
Yes. Board Member Hymas is having difficulty getting on. I'm just letting you know if someone wanted to, Jerry, maybe double check with him and make sure he's got the right link.
Okay. Member Hanson.
Yes, here. And Chair, I am on a cell phone today, so if I fade in and out, it's because we've got not good where I am.
Thank you. Member Hymas is trying.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, guys.
Got in. Good.
Yep, thank you.
Member Straight.
Present.
We got Member Straight. I see him. I didn't hear him.
Yes, I'm here.
All right, great. Member Lear.
I'm here.
Okay. Member Cannon.
Here, good afternoon. Nice to see some of you and hear all of you.
Okay. Member Hart.
Here.
Member Klein.
Good morning. I'm here. Good afternoon.
Member Moss.
I'm here, but I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Let's see, Member Booth.
I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Member Norton.
I'm here.
Okay, Member Huntsman's here. Well, looks like we all made it in. That's good. So I've got to read this famous statement that some of us are getting tired of listening, but this is what's required. So as authorized by Utah Code 52-4, this meeting is being held electronically without an anchor location to reduce the risk to health and safety from COVID-19 by limiting the frequency of in-person meetings. Okay, the next order of business for the board is approval of the minutes. I'm seeking a motion that the board approve the minutes of its February 18th, 2021 meeting.
So moved, Belknap.
Do we have a second?
Second, Cannon.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any discussion to the motion? Not seeing any hands. Board members, please vote at this time. The motion for the board is to approve the minutes of its February 18th, 2021 meeting. So please vote. The voting is complete and it appears to be unanimous. Thank you. So it is unanimous. Okay, as you're aware, we've kind of extended our time a little bit on this meeting to make sure we get through our legislative review of bills. And then also make sure there's plenty of opportunity for any action. So we're going to probably do our very best to get this done in the 3 hours that's allotted. So let's get started. On item 3, legislative review of bills, we have Deputy Superintendent Stallings. Are you ready?
I am, Chair. Thank you. We have Representative Jefferson Moss, who's joined us today to discuss HB 381, Grow Your Own Teacher and School Counselor Pipeline Program. I believe Representative Moss is here in the virtual room with us. Chair, if you'd like to turn the time to him.
Yes. Representative Moss, now, when I'm not going to recognize you on any motions, I know it's a big, that you're going to want to wear your past board member hat today. So I want to recognize you for your good work and your support that you've helped us in the past and also during this legislative session. So we'll turn the time over to you, Representative Moss, on the House Bill 381.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and it's good to be with you. It's always fun to be back with the board. And when you did the roll call and you said Moss, I almost said here. So anyway, it's fun to be with you. So I was hoping Senator Milner would be able to join. I think she's hoping to jump on. She's actually played a big role in this process. She's one of the ones that helped from the very beginning. And I can maybe give you a little backstory. We were actually talking before the session about some of the concerns that we had from the legislative side. Obviously, pandemic, learning loss, all of that, disrupted learning, all of that was very important and a big deal. One of the things that we really have had a lot of concern about, and I know that the board has always had concern about, is making sure that we're recruiting new teachers and recruiting new counselors, and also retention. That's a huge issue. And I've always shared this, but my wife's a teacher right now, and this last year has been really challenging for many of our teachers, and we're so grateful for everything that they're doing. But as we started talking about that, Senator Milner brought up what they've been doing in Davis School District and how they've had this Grow Your Own program up there and how successful it had been. The retention up there has been phenomenal. And the ability to find those that you think would be a good fit with the school, giving them an opportunity to kind of have some experience on the job before they move into the role of a teacher or into a counselor. And so we started to kind of work through that program, and we reached out to some of your staff, and I hope that's okay. They've been phenomenal. And we just said, look, we get the board is not taking a position on this, but we would love to get your help of this is kind of our idea. You know, what do you think about it? And could you help us at least put together what that might look like if we were to create some kind of a program? And so they've been really good for that. But so the idea really is we're creating a scholarship program, and it gives the ability for an LEA to, having principals go out and find, if they want to go out and find aides. We think there's a number of people that would probably fit into this category. We've talked about, maybe somebody that's in another career and wants to make a change. And here's a kind of a pathway where they could come in and be an aide, either as an aide to a teacher, or aide to a counselor. If they're pursuing the counselor path, but they could do that. If it's somebody maybe that's been out of the workforce, so this is what my wife did. My wife actually had been home for about 15 years, and a neighbor who was a principal of a school said, "Hey, I know you've got some background. My wife had been a kindergarten or a preschool teacher. Would you like to come and be an aide?" And my wife had that opportunity for a year. And the teacher or the principal saw some potential skills in her and said, "Why don't you try maybe taking a class or two," right? Meaning, teaching the class to the students. And he saw some talent in her and saw some potential in her. And so he encouraged her to continue. And my wife now is a teacher. And in her case, it was nice because I work at Utah Valley University, so she didn't have to pay for her schooling. Otherwise, I don't know if she would have gone through that path. But somebody like that, this would be a great opportunity for. Another situation we have a lot in some of our more diverse areas of the state is that they're saying, we want our students to see somebody in the classroom that's maybe reflective of the students in that class. And this gives the district or a principal the ability to go out and try to recruit somebody themselves that might be a good fit and really fit within that community, and somebody that's going to stay in that community. That's a big deal. The other area that we really struggle in our state is in rural schools. They really have challenges recruiting teachers. And so this this creates another mechanism or opportunity for them to be able to go out and try to find people that they think would be a good fit. So as I mentioned, research has shown, and I want to maybe give Jennifer, if it's okay, Jennifer Thronson's been heavily involved in helping us at least come up with the specifics on this. But the research has shown that these programs are very successful, and the retention rate is very high. So that's a big reason why we want to do this. But with that, and I don't know if Senator Milner has jumped on as well, but if either Senator Milner or if Jennifer want to speak in addition to what I've shared, that's the general gist of what we're trying to do.
I'm not seeing, is Senator Milner with us?
I don't think so, Chair.
Okay.
And if not, I could turn it over to Jennifer if there's anything else in addition to what I've shared that she would like to share about what we've been working on.
Jennifer Thronson with USBE, are you available?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
So Jennifer Thronson, Director of Teaching and Learning. And thank you, Representative Moss. This has been a fun bill to work on and think through. How do we help get more qualified educators into the system that are already demonstrating this kind of capacity and interest in the field, as well as school counseling, knowing that our counselor ratios, as the board is well aware, aren't where we would like them to be. And so this is a great opportunity to close our teacher shortage as well as our counselor shortage. With reference to the data from the research literature, 95% of teachers who go through the paraprofessional pipeline to become educators retain in the field. That is much more significant than the percentage we see in traditional pathways. Right now, our state kind of retention rate is about 50% remain in teaching after 7 years in the field. So this is a great opportunity to not only kind of grow our own, these are already families and parents that are engaged in the community that represent likely the diversity of that community, as well as build a system that is in the short term kind of takes our paras and builds them up to be those qualified licensed educators in 1-2 years from now. So it's a great opportunity for the state to consider what we might be able to do in building that pipeline into education, considering 35% of enrollment in teacher preparation programs has been kind of the decline. So we have less people going the traditional pathway, but those that go through this non-traditional pathway actually have really high rates of retention. So there's some great benefits in terms of what the research literature would suggest in this space.
And maybe just to add on that, the thing that at least as I looked at it from my wife's perspective, what's nice about this pathway is it gives the individual the opportunity to see if this is really something that's going to work for them, right? Is this really a profession I want to pursue? On the other hand, it gives the principal, in my wife's case, and I've heard this with other schools, an opportunity to really get to know the person and get to see their personality. How do they interact with the students? How do they interact with the other teachers? And really look for some of that fit, right? To see if this is something that they really think would be a good fit for them. And so it's it's kind of like that internship process where you get a chance to really see how they're going to work. And so that's something I think both sides really appreciate, is there's this trial period where they get to get some experience before they then move into something like this, where we could provide that additional education and help them become a full-time teacher.
Representative Moss, can you speak? Because I'm not sure if all the board members have read this, and/or we also have some public on here. Can you speak to the fiscal note and then the kind of the application processes and kind of the limitations that might be there for LEAs as they're moving forward on this?
Yeah, happy to. So the fiscal note, when we first did the bill, it came out with a $4 million ongoing fiscal note. As you're all aware, we don't have a lot of ongoing money, so we knew that was not likely going to happen. So where we're at now is we're looking at doing it one time. So we would fund anywhere from 1 to 2 cohorts, and a cohort is kind of that 1 year of potential teachers. So a cohort would be about I think it's 100 teachers, 25 counselors, and 25 master's counselors that would be part of that cohort. So if we did that on a one-time basis to fund that cohort for 2 years, it would be about $5 million is what the fiscal note would be. If we were to do 2 cohorts, it would go up to $9 million. And basically where we're at now, like we do with every bill, people run legislation. We may love the policy, but say we don't think the fiscal note's going to work. And at that point, if the budget side says, well, we're willing to fund this at 5 million, or we're willing to fund it at a certain amount, we're definitely not looking for ongoing. This would be one-time money. But whatever the budget allows, or whatever we get, if we do get the budget to back it up, we would scale the program to that amount. So depending on where that ends up at, if the bill passes, that's the amount that we would fund. And Jennifer's been very helpful with us on being able to, kind of look at that and say, how would we scale that depending on if the funds are available.
Okay, thank you.
And then you mentioned another one, Mark, sorry, on the LEA. So the LEAs would actually submit the request, and maybe Jennifer, if you want to talk to this, because you really helped on this, but we'd love this to be a bottom-up approach. We'd like to see the principals that are identifying these impressive paraprofessionals that we think there's a lot of potential, that they could then submit those up to the LEAs, and they would be the ones that would actually be making the request for the individual. But I don't know, Jennifer, do you want to talk any more about that process?
Jennifer Thompson?
Sure, thank you, Chair. Yeah, so it is meant to be an LEA competitive grant, so the LEAs would be the ones applying. In the bill, it does require them to consult with their school principals to identify applicants for this process, and so there is a tie to the local community as well as the broader school district, if it is a school district applying, to afford that kind of connectivity and coherence across the school and the district to ensure that we've got people coming in that they've seen this kind of, similar to Representative Moss's wife, seen this opportunity of like, you would be a good fit for teaching, and showing that the school and district want to invest further in that individual.
And Chair, I apologize. I do got to jump off here in a minute. I'm actually presenting in our caucus meeting. So I'm happy to take, if there's any quick questions, I'm happy to do that. Otherwise, I got to jump.
Okay. Vice Chair Davis?
I just want to clarify a question that I brought up in the last meeting when we discussed this. I had thought the bill included administrators, which we do not have a shortage of, but it helps to read the bill before you come to the meeting. And I have since been corrected. I was concerned about a fiscal note for an area of non-shortage. So I want to make that clear publicly and allow you, if you want to echo that this does not include administrators. It does include teachers and counselors in an area which we do have a shortage.
Correct. Thank you. Yes.
Question, Vice Chair Earl, or excuse me, Board Member Earl.
Thank you. Yeah, I just have maybe a couple of comments. Maybe you can add something to that. I've kind of been checking around in some of my districts up in northern Utah. That's where I'm at. That's where I represent. And I have asked a couple of questions because I was interested in what Salt Lake City was doing with their grow your own. I don't know if I can say that right. And they are using people that are already in the schools. They're not going out and recruiting. So, and they're doing it on a pretty low budget, which they probably could use some more finances for that. This has got such a huge price tag to it that, where does the money come from? Meaning, what programs do we miss out on? And there's a lot of organizations that are already working on this in these areas. So I'm just wondering, at what point do we end up with a loss instead of a gain for education funding? Does that kind of make sense what I'm saying?
I get the question.
Yeah.
I would say that the response that we heard fairly resoundingly in the committee from USBA, USSA, the UEA, I think our district, I live in Alpine, in Senator Milner's district in Davis, all of them would be very grateful to receive additional resources to do a program like this. So if we get the money, that's still the question, Board Member Earl, that's still to be determined. But if the funding is available, then I think the response has been, we would love a program like this and love support and maybe extending that. And again, I do apologize. I gotta go here in just a second, but I hope that answers the question. It's really dependent on just getting the budget. Yes, there's some that are doing it on a much smaller scale. We'd like to beef that up. We'd like to say, hey, if we see this is working well on a much smaller scale, let's maybe try to put a little more resources behind this and see if this, even at the level that we're going over to relative to the overall budget of public education is fairly minimal, but understandably, you guys are looking at other priorities. But if this is something that actually can really improve retention and recruitment of teachers, maybe this is something that we do want to scale a little more and bring more people into the classroom that we know are going to stick. That's the goal that we're trying to do with this.
All right.
Representative Moss, I know you've got to go. You're very limited on your time, but we also have staff here that understand what's in the bill. So thank you. You're welcome to stick around as long as you can, but thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
We'll get the conversation going.
Appreciate it so much. Thanks.
Member Norton. You're muted.
I'll direct my question to Director Thornton. I need some clarity here. I thought I understood from Senator Moss that this was, when they talk about grow your own, it was based on, using maybe paras that were already in your school or teachers that were already in your school that maybe might be interested in becoming counselors, or paras that might be able to become teachers. I didn't necessarily gather that it was recruiting. Can you clarify that for me?
Absolutely. So there is the main goal is to grow your own. So is to find those in your local community that are already serving as paraprofessionals or have expressed interest in school counseling as the main. There is a 20% piece that allows a school district or a charter to recruit people who have had experience outside of their school district, but that are interested in this. So they can have up to 20% of the population that they want to run through this scholarship program that haven't currently served in their buildings, but have had experience in other states and other school districts in the state, those kinds of things, as ones that they might want to invest in. When we spoke to LEAs to kind of see how they saw this bill, they asked for that flexibility. So Representative Moss put in that, can't think of the word, that statement that allows them to have that flexibility, but the focused effort is to recruit from within, as you stated.
Other questions or comments regarding Representative Moss's HB 381? Okay, Member Straight.
Real quick, could you give us a little background on how Davis is operating this program? How many teachers, counselors they've been able to bring into this system? Perhaps the funding, I would assume it's just a WPU. But anyway, would you just address that?
Director Thompson, can you answer that at all?
Yes, I can to some level, Chair. So I'm not sure how many. They've started on a pretty small scale. They've partnered with Weber and WGU to afford opportunities through scholarships. WGU has partnered with them and provided scholarships for some of their educators to go through them. And Weber has also been kind of a partner that they've used some local funds that they have available to help get these teachers through. They haven't attempted their counselors yet. They started with their teachers. They've built buildings in terms of the design and models to afford specific spaces and classrooms that are dedicated for these teachers coming in. They have their own workspace that's very close to the main teacher or the mentor teacher in the classroom. They've made a strong partnership with the Schools of the Future up at Utah State to kind of work through this model. And they've started an elementary school as their primary kind of way into this space, and they'll be working their way up into middle and high school, but their initial entry years have been in the elementary space.
Member Lear.
I'm interested in, Director Thronson can also answer this, I believe. Like Cindy, I have not read this, especially the subs as they've come along, as carefully as I should have. What would the money, it's a lot of money. I agree with Board Member Earl. I am always concerned when the board sets its priorities and then these wonderful shiny toys come along late in the game, and I am easily distracted. What would the money be spent on? The recruiting, I get, that seems free. Even the additional professional development seems probably to exist in many LEAs for their current teachers. So where would all of that money be used? What was the intent for the funding?
Director Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so for the funding, the intentions of what they would go towards are tuition, books, certification exams. As we know, there are certain fees to those. So that's the primary. The other is, as a paraprofessional, you are earning money. When you go to do your student teaching, that opportunity to continue to earn money becomes a barrier because generally internships of student teaching are not paid. And so this bill would also pay 0.35 of the FTE, where the LEA would be required to put in 1.15 and the benefits to be able to support that paraprofessional during their student teaching semester and their year internship for counseling. There is some kind of local teeth in the game in terms of money, as well as the state funding would afford some of that FTE to be covered in that semester or year, depending on if it's a counselor or a teacher, to allow them to continue to earn wages that in current systems they aren't able to earn.
So follow up quickly, Chair. Again, to Director Thornton. So again, I'm assuming, I think I misunderstood this in the beginning or it changed. So this is really to subsidize traditional teacher training, not so much to encourage the LEA specific program or what used to be an ARL program. This is really to subsidize those who would go through a traditional teacher training program. Is that primarily true, Jennifer?
Chair, may I respond?
Director Thompson.
Thank you. Primarily, I think the piece that we would like to see greater articulated in board rule is the opportunity for competency. Given that these paraprofessionals, some of them have served in this setting for 5-10 years, there are going to be some sets of competence in terms of knowledge, skills, and dispositions that they have already acquired in their time as paraprofessionals, for example, and therefore the LEA will work on partnerships with universities that also afford the opportunity to demonstrate competence rather than just the traditional pathway. So it's a blend. Ultimately, is the goal is to allow demonstration of competence along with, if you don't have competence, then the traditional pathway of coursework or working towards a micro-credential, for example, could potentially be routes that you could use.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Member Earl?
Yeah, can you give me the numbers again that he was indicating that this would cover? Was it like 25 or something, or did I miss?
Yeah, great question. So it's 100 teachers, 25 counselor assistants, and 25 counselor interns a year. So it's 150 total each year. And it takes 1 to 2 years to get them through, depending on what part of the learning process they're in, what kind of backgrounds they already possess, those types of things. So if I'm a counselor getting a master's degree to become a school counselor, that's a 2-year route. If I'm a counselor or someone in a related field that we want to say, hey, we'd love to see you go into school counseling, that's a 1-year program. And then we've got the paraprofessionals. Some of those might be already coming with some associate's or bachelor's degree. And so there's some flexibility in the time it takes. But in general, it's 1 to 2 years for completion.
Okay, and we have roughly what % of need do we have that this would fill? In other words, if we have like 2,000 teachers each year that are resigning, and then we have another 1,000 that are retiring, do you know what I mean? Or whatever the numbers are, is this, I guess I'm concerned that this may not make the dent we want. I like the grow your own, but I'm not sure if this is exactly it yet. Anyways, can you articulate that a little bit? What is this gonna, is it gonna make enough of an impact to do what we need it to do?
From a data-driven perspective, I do not know how many we're losing each year compared to what this would equate to, but we can look into that and get that information back to you. From could this have impact? I think getting any qualified licensed educators into our system that we don't currently have or don't have pathways to get is an opportunity that we wouldn't be afforded otherwise.
Board Member Hart?
Yeah, just a point of clarification. You can't do, say, the Apple program without a bachelor's degree of some sort correct? Director Thornton?
Chair, I'm going to have to phone a friend on that one, if you don't mind. Hold on,
well,
a friend just phoned me. She said that is correct. Malia, Dr.
Right,
Height.
and I'm sorry, I shouldn't ask. I am 100%, well, I'm 90%, 95% certain you can't do that. So this isn't necessarily subsidizing traditional, I mean, it is, but these teachers or these paraprofessionals don't have to have a bachelor's degree. And so it opens a pathway for someone who doesn't already have a bachelor's degree to become a teacher. That pathway doesn't exist in our alternate routes to life, which not the alternate, but the alternate routes that exist, this one doesn't exist currently, correct?
Superintendent Dixon, do you want to, your hand's raised, I think you're wanting to get into this conversation or part of the answer.
Yes, thank you, Chair Huntsman. Good afternoon, everybody. We've had a Parrot Educator to Teacher scholarship for a long time, and it's been mentioned, but I want to highlight it a little bit because I think it answers Board Member Hart's question, and that is that the quick answer is yes, this allows for Parrot educators who may not have a bachelor's to continue on with coursework in order to get that bachelor's, similar to the Parrot Educator program we have now. And that was a barrier for many of our Parrot educators. We would just say, oh, here's PJUP money or here's a scholarship, but they were lacking that very specific piece. And while it supported, for the most part, supported our Parrot educators who had bachelors in moving on, I think there are provisions, unless somebody corrects me, to overcome that barrier and help them close that gap to move into the actual then teaching pedagogy and content coursework needed.
Do you have a follow-up, Board Member Hart?
Not at this time, thank you.
Board Member Hanson?
Thank you, Chair. I just wonder if there's any sort of retention requirement for these folks after we subsidize their education or their qualification to become educators. Do they owe that district or that LEA a particular number of years of service, or are they just free to go when they finish?
Director Thompson?
Yes, thank you. So we discussed with Senator Milner and Representative Moss, should there be some kind of stick for sticking or loan forgiveness instead of just this kind of scholarship opportunity. And due to past practice at the agency, we had a grant program that was serve at least 3 years. And then if you don't, you have to pay it back. And we turned into a credit agency and really don't have the manpower to mitigate. And a lot of these, if they're a paraprofessional and they're not going into the field, they're not going to be making enough money for us to garnish wages to get this back. So it was determined not to do that, especially considering the research literature that 95% of these educators would stay in the profession. The amount of energy exhausted to recover some of those funds from the few that might leave didn't outweigh the responsibility and lift it would take to secure those funds back. So at this time that is not built in. And I did want to hit Board Member Earl's question around retention. Currently, we're losing about 3,000 teachers a year. That doesn't take into account the number that join us each year, but that's the 3,000 that actually leave the profession annually. And so with this getting us about 100 teachers back is a small percentage of closing that gap, but it is a percentage.
Did you have a follow-up, Board Member Hanson? And Board Member Hart, your hand's raised. Do you have another question? So we've been speaking a little bit about what this is and isn't. If I just might throw something out there on the rural side, it's very hard to attract educators unless they're returning back home specifically to teach. And however, there's a lot of paraprofessionals. I have a really good friend that's just finishing up special ed that was a paraprofessional and ended up helping on the special ed side and great talent, and there's a huge sacrifice for trying to get her education in place to be this teacher. And there's a ton of examples like that where this program absolutely would benefit. And also along the lines of on the counseling side, so on the rural side, there's a pretty significant opportunity and benefit. And there's the other piece of this is when these educators know, or somebody is known and they know of their talents and stuff, creates an ability through this. It's not going to cover everyone. It's going to probably be very competitive trying to get access to this funding, but it will help fill that back, the pipeline for educators to come into the program. So I can speak on the rural side, but I know these cities that have had these programs, or the districts that are in the cities, definitely have spoke to the benefit of this. But that's what's before us. Board Member Earl, your hand is raised.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I had one more question based on the information that was just stated. So really, an LEA might get funding for maybe one or two individuals in this category, because if we're talking 100 teachers, so that's gonna be an interesting competition to get to the funding. So I don't know. I'm just trying to work out all the kinks in such a way that it actually is beneficial, because I think a local district could look and say, oh yeah, we know 3 people in our at our high school and middle school that could definitely benefit from this. But the reality is, if we're just talking 100 teachers and you spread that around the whole state, you're talking maybe 1 or 2 fundings for for local districts, which would be beneficial. But I think some of the grassroots efforts are really making a broader impact. We might want to make sure we're maybe looking at this as extensive enough that that we're looking at things that are successful already and then maybe helping them succeed.
Member Thornton.
Yes, I just wanted to add that in our recent NASB phone call, this was a topic that was brought up by several different board representatives, and they were very, very happy with what they'd seen. They said, so often we get graduates in, education graduates into a school, and they don't realize what a school job is really like. Whereas these people that have been paraprofessionals and these people that have been teachers are very familiar with the culture, and the major difference that they see is that they are A, ready to hit the ground from day one, and B, they really do have great retention. So that was just some feedback, kind of more on a national scale.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Superintendent Stallings, I'm not seeing any other hands raised on this House Bill 381. Do you want to please continue on?
Sure, Chair. The next item, I think we're moving to 3.3. We do not have any policy requests to run by you today. And I believe Spencer Jenkins has joined the board today to discuss the first bill on the agenda for 3.3, and that is SB 136, Higher Education Scholarships Amendments, which is sponsored by Senator Owens.
Do we have him? I'm trying to find him in the.
And maybe he had to drop out. Nathan Ock, do you know, did he have to leave? Chair, if you'd like, I can just start moving forward and we can come back to that one if Mr. Jenkins joins us. So would you like me to just move forward and start going down the list?
Yes, if somebody sees that he jumps back in, let us know. Okay.
Great. it looks like Board Member Belknap might have something to say, Chair.
Well, I'm seeing that also. Vice Chair Belknap.
Thank you, Chair. Point of order please.
Yeah.
Before Angie starts, I just wanted to make a comment that of something that Angie does when she sends comments out to legislators, even though they don't often say this from our staff, but this is an exact wordings of something she sends. Any amendments we requested shouldn't be interpreted as support by USBE or the board and is not meant to indicate support for or a position on the policy. And so even though legislators are often saying, well, the board has put their input on this, just note that that is being given to them when they've been asked for input. Thank you for point of order.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that as well, Vice Chair Belknap, because we often hear legislators, well-intentioned, of course, mentioning that they've worked with staff. And as an administrative agency, we often get asked to look at bills to see how whether they're workable or not. So, all right, Chair, if you don't mind, I'll move forward then.
Okay.
Okay, the first bill that we're going to talk about today, and actually the next three bills that I'll be reviewing are bills that we requested. They're tied to our policy requests. So they should sound familiar to you because you would have reviewed them before staff reached out to ask the sponsors to open the bill. The first one is HB 425, Education Monitoring and Funds Management Amendments. As you'll remember, the board also sought legislation back in the 2020 session, but the bill ran out of time due to being numbering quite late. This version is different, and you may remember that the first or second legislative meeting we had, I shared with you these concepts that are included in the bill kind of in a bullet point manner. So the three things that this bill does is the first is it codifies some monitoring and funds management standards into a new section 53F 1104, which starts it on about line 98. This section codifies the monitoring and funds management standards that we use for our federal programs, and the language has been modeled in many ways after those provisions in federal code. The second thing it does, starting on about line 153, is it creates a charter school closure reserve account. The account would be funded with $1 million one time to be the base of this account, and then the rest of the account would be generated by from our charter schools at $2 per year per student. So it's approximately $160,000 a year that would be generated from our charter schools. The way that funding would be collected or obtained would be dealt with by you all in our board rule. But the cap, as stated in the bill, would be at $3 million. So that's kind of the goal of where to get to for the account. If there are no claims from the account by 2024, that cap would go down to 2.5 million. And again, if there are no funds that need to be used from the account by July 1, 2026, the account would have a max of 2 million. And this is just to address the issue or question that we've received. Why have $3 million in an account if it's not being drawn upon? So it provides the board rulemaking authority, of course, to clarify kind of the procedures for that account. And we would work with the authorizer of the charter school that is closing or has closed to determine how those funds would be, or when the funds would be drawn down. The last thing it does is the bill does remove, it's a pretty technical change, but on about lines 82 and 83 just deletes the reference to FASB in there. As many of you know, last year, there's another section of code that requires all charter schools to use GASB. So it's a technical change. And that's it for that bill. If there are no questions, I could move on.
Yes, there's two hands up. Board Member Lear.
Just briefly, I have a question for Deputy Superintendent Stallings. if that's okay. This would be well, and actually I had 2 short questions, I'm sorry. This would only be used for school closure. This amount of money is only available for school closure, not for any other debt purposes that a charter school might have. Is that right?
That is correct. And as you look at the language, you'll see that it requires the USBE and the authorizer to exhaust any collection or, other ways to resolve the funds that are owed either to the federal government or to the state before using the account.
And second short question, if that's okay, Chair.
Yeah.
I can't think of any schools that are in this situation, but it couldn't be retroactive. Is that right? This would be going forward beginning May 2021. Is that true?
That is the intent. I personally am not aware of any schools that are closed recently or are on the verge of closing that this even could apply to if we allowed it to go retrospective. But I agree with you. It would be as of the date of the effective date of the bill.
Thank you.
Board Member Earl.
Yeah, so I have maybe a technical legislative question, but this is still in rules. It's not even assigned to a committee. Are we anticipating this just comes back next year? I just don't know. Is there enough time to even do anything with this, or why is it still sitting there? I guess is maybe my question. It's been there for just, a little bit, not a long time, but for 1 week.
Right. Yes, the fiscal note for the bill has not been attached to the bill yet, and that's going through the fiscal analyst's office at this point. I've been informed that the House is really holding strong to a rule that you have to have a fiscal note attached to the bill before they'll let it out of rules and to be assigned to a committee. You'll notice that is not happening over on the Senate side. We just saw a bill yesterday, for example, that was heard in the Senate Education Committee that didn't have a fiscal note yet. So you'll see a little bit of a difference between what the Senate allows to come out of rules and onto a committee versus the House. So we believe that the fiscal note will be released today, late today, or we're hoping by tomorrow morning. Representative Snow, I believe, is planning to have it assigned or on the agenda for House Education tomorrow. But that all depends, of course, on whether or not the fiscal note is released by the fiscal analyst's office. So that's what we're waiting on at this point.
Okay, I just was curious on that, looking at the time frame. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands raised on this.
Great. And we do hope that the bill has a chance still of making it through, but we are late in the session. It's a race against the clock. And many of you probably noticed there are quite a few bills that have been numbered this week. The next bill is HB 421. Again, this is another bill that we requested, Intensive Services Pilot Program. You may remember that for a number of years, we've had a state intensive services program appropriation of just under $3 million per year. But shortly after the 2020 session, in the budget cuts of spring and summer, this program, not only the funding was cut, but the statutory language was repealed. So this bill would reinstate a pilot program for a state version of the intensive services program. We do have some federal funds that are currently distributed. You'll also remember that we recently revised our R277752, our board rule related to now only the federal funds, but it would apply as well to the state funds if this bill passes or if funding comes to us from the state. So the bill's pretty simple. It essentially establishes the 3-year pilot program and delegates the distribution formula to the board to do, which we already have, as I stated in R277752. And that rule was recently revised based on feedback that our smaller districts and charter schools were having a hard time accessing funding from that program due to the way the statute required the highest cost students to be reimbursed first, which naturally benefited very large school districts and one in particular. And the program right now would have a sunset date after 3 years, which would require a committee review of the program. And then the committee could make a recommendation of whether the program should continue or not. And it includes an appropriation of $12 million to be used over 3 years. So that would be approximately $5 million per year. Happy to answer questions, or I can move on to the next.
Okay, Board Member Earl.
Yes, Chair, I'm just wondering, can any of this money, is there any requirements that prevent it from being held, right? So the money's given for intensive services and so that it's not held within the school itself in case of, whatever that we've maybe seen in the past. Is there anything built into this, or is that something we would be just relying on our rules to take care of?
Chair, may I move forward? Sorry.
Please do.
Okay. That is something that is addressed in our board rule. You may remember that right now there's kind of two things at play. If an LEA has 20% or more carry forward in their general special ed program, so that's not just intensive services, but say their state special education funds, they have an over 20% carry forward, that they would not be able to apply for the funding. So there's that. And I think that's the main trigger we have in our board rule, because it is a reimbursement program. This is not something that we distribute like our special education add-on, for example, where funding goes out based on a formula regardless of the carry forward balances you have. Our rule looks at the prior year, looks to see what amount of carry forward funds are there that the LEA holds, and then prohibits them from applying for this program if they have a certain amount of carry forward or more.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands raised.
Great. I will move forward then with HB 430, Student Safety Education for Parents Amendments. Again, another bill that we requested. It's a very simple bill. It does two things. It allows a school district to hold their parent review seminar on Saturdays or after 6, which currently it always has to be after 6, but we've had some LEAs say that they would be interested in holding this potentially on a Saturday. And it also, at the bottom of the bill, allows a district to hold these parent seminars through a virtual platform when there's a state public health order that's restricting public gatherings. So it just provides more flexibility to our districts in how to provide these parent seminars to their community.
Board Member Lear.
Just quickly, Deputy Superintendent Stallings, and this is just not a question, but a comment. I think, and I have always thought, that these parent seminars could and should be offered virtually at the LEA's discretion. So I'm not in a position to make that amendment, but I just wanted to suggest that might be a possibility during pandemic or not. This might be a very helpful way to be less of a burden on LEAs, but still allow them to contact and encourage parents in this area. Just a thought. Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other hands raised.
Great, I'll move forward. The next 3 bills are all amending or addressing the statewide online education program in one way or another. So we'll start with HB 382, Online Course Access Amendments by Representative Birkeland. This bill would allow or provide a pot of money for our LEAs, especially for high schools of 1,000 students or less. It would allow those students to participate in the statewide online education program without USBE taking the funds from the district's portion of their WPU or the charter schools. I don't know if we have many. Well, yeah, actually we do have some charter schools with less than 1,000 students. So for our districts and charter schools, who have students who participate in the statewide online education program, the students' amount that goes to the provider would be taken from a separate pot of money, kind of similar to what happens for our homeschool and private school students now, versus for those high schools that are larger than 1,000, we would continue to subtract a portion of that LEA's funding to pay the provider. So I'd be happy to answer questions on that if there are any.
Board Member Lear?
Sorry, I seem to be the only person that's maybe intensely looking at this stuff, but I so appreciate this bill. This is what I was so concerned about with our previous board rule. I think this would benefit small LEAs who don't have the supervisory capacity, who may not have, for whom taking a part of a student's WPU is a lot more significant than for large LEAs. So I think this would be a huge benefit and bonus, and it's what I really hope for small LEAs. I think this would be a great bill and at a very minor cost, and a disproportionate assistance to small LEAs. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other hands raised. Please continue.
Great.
Hang on.
I will.
Hang on. Board Member Hymas?
Yeah, thank you for that quick reaction, Chair Huntsman. I just did have just a clarifying question. I think you said high school, then you went to charter school. Is it the entire charter or small school that would be 1,000 less, or 1,000 students or less, or are we speaking secondary or high school? Are we separating those in the case of a K-12 charter school? Are those separated by elementary and secondary, or is it in the brick and mortar building itself?
Deputy Superintendent Stallings?
That is a question that I am not sure about, and we probably should ask the sponsor the intent, because all it says is a public high school right now. So I would imagine that if no clarification is made, that in order to calculate that 1,000 student amount, that we would look at the enrollment in grades 9 through 12. So if it's meant to be something else, I think it would need to be clarified. That term is not defined, but currently the program is only available to students or to take courses for students in grades 9 through 12. There are some 6th, 7th, and 8th graders who may take those courses. So I would imagine that as an office, we would interpret that to mean the enrollment in the charter school that's in grades 9 through 12.
Thank you.
Chair, could I add to that? This is Dale Frost, Fiscal Policy Analyst.
Yeah, Dale Frost.
Chair, thank you. Member Hymas, like Deputy Superintendent Stallings was saying, that term high school is not clearly defined. For the fiscal note, we took a broader calculation. And so for those 9th graders, for example, that are part of we included any students in schools grades 9 through that were in grades 9 through 12, regardless of the type of school, for the fiscal note, which is about 440,000. So if we don't, obviously that would need to be defined later, but for the fiscal note, there's a broader interpretation. Any school less than 1,000 that had high school age students.
Thank you, Mr. Frost. Deputy Superintendent Stallings, please continue.
Okay, thank you. And just wanted to note, Board Member Hymas, if we were to look at it in that broader way, it could impact your schools that are currently either K-12 or say 7-12, because now it would assume that the students enrolled in 7-8 as well as the K-6 could go towards your 1,000, and then that charter school might not qualify. I just wanted to make sure that you probably recognize that yourself. But
did you have a follow-up?
I did, just real quick, because I'm also thinking about and I could be way off here, but the junior highs that still have a freshman class, right? 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, they would have more than 1,000 students in that brick and mortar building, but maybe potentially less than 1,000 high school students. So anyway, just my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Good input.
All right.
Please continue.
Thanks, Chair. I'll move on then to SB 226, Online Education Program Revisions by Senator Johnson. This bill would now allow not only LEAs and a program of higher ed, institution of higher education to provide statewide online education courses or to be a provider of the SOEP program, but it would now allow a certified online course provider to also qualify. And the state board would determine or certify those providers. So a provider could, be out of state or in state, but currently not associated or run through a charter school or district, school district. And right now, all of our providers that participate and provide courses through the statewide online education program are LEAs. They are school districts or charter schools. So you can see in the bill, it provides the board with rulemaking authority as well as standard setting for what those online providers need to, or the standards they need to meet in order to be certified. And be happy to answer questions on that one.
A question from board members? I'm not seeing any hands raised. So.
Great.
Please.
I will. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, Chair.
Fine, please continue.
I'll move to SB 234. This is the last of the trio of statewide online education program bills. This one would expand the statewide online education program to courses in grades 7 and 8. So currently, the statewide online education program currently only provides courses for grades 9 through 12. There are some students outside of grades 9 through 12 who participate, but they are taking high school courses. This bill would add courses for 7th and 8th graders and allow students to not only earn high school credit, but middle school credit. Be happy to answer questions on this one.
I'm not seeing any hands raised. Oh, Vice Chair Belknap.
So Angie, for clarity on this one, this is adding middle school credit, that's middle school courses. Okay, and that's all this is on this one?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any other hands raised, so Deputy Superintendent Stallings, please continue.
Great. I will turn the time over to Jeff. You'll probably be happy to get a break from my voice. And so Jeff, he's going to review the next couple of bills.
Before we move, I got a late hand coming up. Board Member Lear.
Again, thank you on the uptake there, Chair. And I'm sorry, because I did have a question about the last bill. I'm wondering, and I don't know if this can be provided quickly, but I understood when we had the prolonged discussion of the SOEP a few months ago with the state and the board and the rule, there were not data that were very useful in letting us know how effective SOEP courses were. And so I'm wondering if there are more data now. This might be a question for Director Thornton. If there are more data suddenly or now, or would this be a premature move on the bill we just previously discussed to add yet more courses when we don't even know how effective the courses we have are? So I just wanted Jennifer's opinion about that, if we could ask her. It's a many-part question, I know.
Director Swanston, are you ready to respond?
Absolutely. So in terms of, do we have new data? No. What you've seen is what we have in terms of that board report that was shared. We are increasing our kind of communication with that they have to test with the state assessments through those providers as part of the program and the evaluation. And we are working with our Dr. Hernandez in our office to do a more comprehensive annual evaluation after this year. as part of the requirement for legislature. So those two pieces will be enhanced. And I think we are required to go to the legislature in the fall with kind of a study of the program and a recommendation around funding moving forward for the high school program particularly. And that evaluation will be part of that conversation. So we'll have that for the board likely this summer in terms of outcomes and then recommendations for future funding for the program.
So I'll follow up briefly, Chair, on that. So would it be your opinion, Jennifer, and I just put you on the spot because you're here and you're an expert, I trust. Would it be your opinion that perhaps waiting on expanding this might be better till we have more data?
Director Swanson?
I don't usually get asked my opinion, but I think anytime we're not conclusive on what we currently have, there makes sense to have some caution in expanding before we really know what the current reality is on the high school part that we already possess. So I'm going to leave it at that.
That's helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Not seeing any other hands up, so I guess it's turning this over to Jeff. Are you ready to take the helm?
I am for a moment, yes.
You bet. Okay. Well, welcome to the driver's seat.
Thank you. It's good to be here. And good afternoon to all of you. Hope you're doing well. The next bill we're going to cover is House Bill 417. It is the Charter School Authorization Amendments. It's actually not a very extensive bill in terms of length. This bill essentially allows a school district who is an authorizer to now authorize charter schools outside of the school district's boundaries, where previously the school district could only authorize a charter school if they are an authorizer, if the school was within their boundaries. So this expands where they can authorize charter schools. And makes some technical corrections as well and conforming changes with that. That's that bill.
Okay. I'm not seeing it. Oh, Board Member Earl.
Yeah, my question is, Chair, if the charter board was involved in the writing of this, if they're assisted with that, or if any of their staff or personnel were involved in putting this together, if there's staff that know.
Jeff, do you want to answer?
I do not know if the State Charter School Board has been involved with this bill whatsoever. I'm not sure if anyone else online is familiar if our staff or the charter school staff has been involved.
I doubt it.
I'm not seeing any hands raised from staff to dive in. Did you have
Okay.
to follow up?
No, I just was wondering if the dialogue had been carried on with those that are actively working in this area, or if it was an extension outside. So thank you.
Please continue.
Great. The next bill is House Bill 428, the Public Education Governance and Appeals. This bill does two different things. It first, as you can see here on lines 59, starting on line 59, it puts some definition around what does the Constitution mean when the state board has general control and supervision of public education. Previously, this term has not been defined in code, and this would provide, I would say, a lighter definition in terms of not super extensive. And it also directly states that the board can delegate its supervision authority in board rule. Second thing, and the larger thing that this bill does, is it creates an appellate process for local board decisions, whether a charter school or a school district. Originally, this was going to be just for charter or school districts, but it does apply to both. It essentially creates a signature petition threshold based on your student enrollment. So if you have X number of students or higher, you as parents would have to have a certain number of signatures on petition to meet the threshold to force an appeal of a local board or a governing board's decision. And that appeal would then go to what is created in this bill, a panel in which the state board has one seat out of the 5. that would then handle the appeal for the local board decision. I did want to highlight, if I can find it in here, that this doesn't allow for appeals of every single kind of decision that a local board makes. It does prohibit, you can see here on lines 134, so the definition of local board decision or policy. So this is what can and cannot be appealed. So it does not include everything starting on line 137 going down to 142. So those are decisions parents could not appeal. Otherwise, if it is not on this list and it is the decision made by the local or governing board and parents within that school, charter school or school district meet the signature threshold, they could appeal to this panel. It is important to note this bill does not give the board review appellate rights of the panel. So this becomes kind of the final stop before going to the judicial system and going on to a district court. Although the panel does have one seat reserved for a board member. I'll pause there and see if there are any questions that anyone has regarding this bill.
We've got multiple hands up. Board Member Lear.
Yes, thank you. I looked at this bill and initially thought it had some things I liked in it. I quickly discarded that first thought. And I think for one thing, the bill is sort of misleading in its name. It's not a board appeal committee at all. It's essentially a legislative appeal committee because there's, as Jeff pointed out, one board member out of 5 seats, 2 legislative appointments, which can't be legislators, but the speaker and the Senate president also choose the chair of the committee. And I also feel like this is a circumvention. As frustrated as I am sometimes as a constituent in a local board area, as frustrated as I sometimes am with my board members' decisions, I respect that they're elected board members and that it's not appropriate to just have buyer's remorse and say, I want to circumvent this board's local decisions. And that's what I think this committee does. And it doesn't even circumvent it through another education board. So I feel like it's almost a vendor bill for attorneys who might represent these parent groups. And I maybe would like to be one of those attorneys, but the more I've thought about this and read through it, the less I like it. And I feel like it's also not really an education process at all, but inserts the legislature into the public education system. So it's unfortunate. I think there is some possibility in there, but I'm looking for it. Thanks. Just wanted to say that.
And thank you. Board Member Earl.
Yes, I think my questions might be along the same lines. I'm just wondering, what is this trying to solve? I guess that's the question, Chair, that I'm curious. Is this, and once again, is it just going around those elected officials? And if so, I don't think this really is something we should be doing. Otherwise, I mean, there is a process, right? If you're not, anyway, I just wondered what it was trying to solve. Is there, certain things we're trying to solve? And maybe, I don't know, Chair, who could answer that, but that's the question that comes up in my mind, is trying to create something to resolve some kind of problem.
Jeff, are you wanting to take this on, or Angie?
The impetus really for this bill is related to COVID-19 and whether or not schools were closed or open. So this is really related to decisions to remain remote completely as an LEA or to open up in person. So as you can kind of see from the list on 137 down to 142, there's a lot of decisions that local boards and governing boards make that would not be included as appealable decisions. But the impetus really was related to in-person instruction.
Okay, and this is the first time I've read through this, so I think it's something that's just not a good idea, but that, anyways.
Not seeing any other hands raised, Jeff, please continue.
Okay. Next bill, we'll jump over to House Bill 300. This is part of the suite of bills, another trio, if you will. This one with the reporting requirements. So House Bill 300 accompanies House Bill 42, as well as House Bill 100 and something that I cannot remember right now off the top of my head. But this particular bill relates to a review process that would need to take place with LEAs and the state board in reviewing on a regular basis the reports that are potentially created by statute and state board rule. So this would just essentially require that review process happen, kind of make notifications of things to look for, but it would be a coordinated effort between LEAs and the state board. And that's this bill.
Okay, Vice Chair Belknap.
Thank you. So Jeff, I find this interesting that are we making a new report to eliminate reports that were done? There's got to be some reports created here, correct? To have this group?
There would need to be a review process of reports. There's nothing in here that requires a new report to be a report of the reports, if you will, to be given out to anyone. But this would require that reports be reviewed and that data be considered amongst the LEAs and the state board, in which case recommendations could be made to the legislature, or with the state board rule, amendments to your rules could be made as well in response to anything that's found in this review process.
As we create a report to report up. Just making a comment. Thanks.
So Vice Chair Belknap, we don't have a motion on, but thanks for your question, because we're just questioning the intent of these bills, and so thank you.
Correct.
All right. So I'm not seeing any other hands raised. Jeff, will you please continue?
Okay, I'll pass it back to Angie for the next couple bills.
Okay, Deputy Superintendent Stallings, you're ready to.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And just, I've been informed that Spencer Jenkins has returned. He is back in the virtual room, as well as Nathan Ock. If you'd like to turn time over to Spencer Jenkins to discuss SB 136, Higher Education Scholarships Amendments. I know he had to step away for just a moment, and but just want to let you know he's back, or I can move on.
Let's jump back into that, and then we'll come back to this. So, Mr. Jenkins, are you available?
Yes, thank you, and I apologize for the leaving you high and dry, staff and the board. Chair Huntsman, thank you. I'll be very brief, and I appreciate this invitation to present to the board. This SB 136 is a number of revisions to the state scholarships that our board manages, the Board of Higher Education. Specifically 3 programs. There's, well, 4, but we're merging 2 down into 3. So there's 2 technical education scholarships that were previously part of 2 systems. They'll be merged together in this bill. The second piece is the New Century Scholarship that's been around since 1999. This sunsets that program after this year's applicants, this year's graduating high school seniors. And then the Regent Scholarship, it renames it to the Opportunity Scholarship. That's mostly because of the board's name is no longer Board of Regents, but it also goes along with some board action that was taken in December to change the requirements of that scholarship based on data that we've pulled with the help of USBE staff and the Utah Data Research Center on graduating seniors. Just a couple minutes on those requirements. What we found, what we looked at was what are the strongest predictors for post-secondary success after high school, and GPA still is the largest, by far biggest predictor for success, and it's right around that 3.3 GPA based using historical data from the past 5 years of high school seniors. Second to that is what we call advanced courses, and that's International Baccalaureate, Advanced Placement, and Concurrent Enrollment courses. And so behind that, quite a ways, was actually standardized tests like ACT and SAT. So as a result, our board has made the decision that to change the requirements to Regent Scholarship to only be a GPA and advanced courses. Along, of course, we like having the FAFSA being completed as part of that. So that we plan, assuming this bill passes, to implement those changes starting next year for next year's seniors, the graduating class of 2022. That's a brief description of what this bill does. It just passed the House today, so it will go back to the Senate, and hopefully it'll be filed for enrolling and for the governor's signature. But our plan is here immediately hereafter to reach back out to USBE and various groups on the K-12 side to make sure as we implement this, that the administration of it is done in a way that makes more sense. We know we've had some administrative problems over the years with this program, and we hope to really streamline that. So with that, I'll be happy to take questions. I know you're on a tight schedule.
Questions from board members? I'm not seeing any.
Great.
Mr. Jenkins, you did a wonderful job, and then the Senate bill speaks for itself also. So,
Thank you for the time.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Superintendent Stallings, you ready to pick up where you're at?
I am, thank you.
A few more left, don't we? And then we'll be moving. Okay, thank you.
Happy to go as long as you would like. So you just let me know when you'd like us to stop. The next bill is House Bill 402. And I just realized that this bill is the one that we requested, and it should have been up closer to the top of our list. So this bill is the School Transportation Funding Amendments by Representative Johnson. It would require us to, as we're distributing transportation funds, to look at the data from the 2019, look at the 2019 eligible transportation costs as we distribute funds for the 21 and 22 fiscal years. So again, this is something we also requested. And that is because, as you know, the 2020 and 21 school years, the 1920 and then the 2021 school years have been a little bit of an anomaly, and we've not been transporting or students as much as we normally would. And of course, we all hope that we go back to normal as soon as possible, and want to make sure that our school districts have the funds they need to continue their transportation programs. Should I move on?
Any questions on this? So this is, what was the number on this one again?
HB 402.
Okay. And that's in our request group with our fingerprints all over it. Okay. Yes. All right, please continue.
Great. The next bill is SB 178, Education Deadline and Fiscal Flexibility. There are three general things that this bill does. First, it changes the date by which we can select a second provider for the new program, the Scholarship Granting Organization, Special Needs Opportunity Scholarship Program that passed last year. So the statute currently states that we could select a second provider on January 1 of 22 or later, but now that's been moved to 2023. The second thing, probably the most significant thing that the bill does, is it would allow for this fiscal year only an LEA to use up to 35% of the LEA's state restricted funds in each program, just to use them in an unrestricted manner, or essentially unrestrict them, put them in account to be used at a later date as well. And as I stated, this power would only be available, or this flexibility would only be available for 1 year. And there are some considerations that staff have raised, not about the statute itself, but that LEAs need to be sure as they make those determinations to use that flexibility, that they keep their maintenance of effort requirements that they keep those in mind so they don't unfortunately end up using those restricted funds in the unrestricted manner and then being required by the federal government to reimburse. But that's just something to note, that we will be as staff sharing that with LEAs as they make those decisions. And then the third thing is it makes a change on line 179 to a school fees or student fees issue, which states that beginning with this next school year, the one coming up, an LEA was required to only impose fees that would equal the cost of that program or the cost of the activity course or program for the student. And this bill just delays that by 1 year. And that's it. I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, Board Member Lear.
Tell me the number of that bill again, Angie, please.
SB 178.
And did you say that is one the board asked for?
No, the one we asked for was HB 402 on transportation. This one we did not.
Okay, and then third question, if that's okay, Chair, follow up.
Okay.
Related. Comment really, and then a question. I really like the date changes. That makes a ton of sense. Those seem very appropriate given the situation we've been in this year. I would also love to delay the opportunity scholarship year after year after year if we could. But that is a good idea. The second question, the second part though, is the 35% that LEAs could use from their restricted accounts. Tell me, and it might be Dale Frost or Scott Jones, who could tell me what are restricted funds except in addition to special education funds. I get that, and I get Title I funds. Are there other funds that are restricted and that maintenance effort applies to?
Okay, Superintendent Jones or Del Frost.
I'm here, sir, for this one, Chair.
Yes, that's Superintendent.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Answer Board Member Lear's question. Yes, there are other restricted funds. An example I'd give you is CTE funds.
And one more follow-up if I can, Chair, and then I won't belabor this.
You're fine.
It's 35% in your estimation, and I know this is an opinion question, but you're paid a lot of money to give good opinions, so expert opinions. So is that about an appropriate percentage of the funds? Is that too much, too little? Is it going to be dangerous? Are we going to be faced with concerns with federal funding? What's your opinion on that, Scott?
Chair, may I respond?
Yes, please.
My opinion on this is, first of all, there's risk associated with this since we're getting into, what basically amounts to unknown territory, which amounts to the unrestricting of restricted funds. The 35% amount, I can't honestly make a determination to answer the other part of your question on whether that's too much, not enough. It's really going to depend on what is or is not happening at the LEA and how they intend and ultimately use 35% of what amounts to or is currently defined as their restricted funds. Our plan, should this pass, would be to train and ensure we coordinate. I think we coordinate really well with the USBE leadership. We're very invested with the charter schools as well, that there's a good possibility that we'd be able to, before they start using the funds, get a good idea about how they intend to use the funds. Now, I can't say that would be a perfect process either, but in my expert opinion, that's the way we'd need to proceed along this line so that, it's a uniform process as much as possible to ensure that, we mitigate against the risk I talked to earlier, that, there could be an unfortunate event or circumstances where funds were just, even with this unrestriction of them, were not applied properly. Chair Huntsman, did I answer Board Member Lear's question satisfactorily?
I believe so, but I'll ask Board Member Lear.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands raised.
All right, then I'll move forward with the next bill, Chair, if that's okay.
Yes.
So the next bill is first substitute House Bill 323, High Poverty Schools Teacher Bonus Program Amendments. As you may remember, we currently have this program provides bonuses or incentives to teachers who have a median growth percentile or MGP of 70 or higher if they're in grades 4 through 8. Actually, it could be, I think, even 3 through 8, or actually, no, I apologize, it's grades 4 through 8. Or if the teacher's students achieve a certain benchmark reading score, then if those teachers are in a high poverty school, then there's state funding where we match a school district or charter school's amount to provide the teacher. I believe it's about $7,000. What this bill would do is it kind of, this last year, we weren't able to provide these incentives because we did not have statewide assessments or the RISE assessments last spring. We also did not have the end of year Acadians or Dibbles reading assessment at the end of the year. So what the bill would do is it provides a way for the incentives to move forward or to be distributed, and uses some different benchmarks or criteria for the next year or two, just due to the assessment pause from last spring. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I'm not seeing any hands raised. Please continue, Deputy Superintendent Stallings.
Great. Then the last bill before we turn time back over to Jeff that I'll be reviewing is HB 343, School Emergency Drills Amendments. You may remember that during the spring, the legislature paused or waived a number of the emergency drill requirements. This bill would do something similar through the end of the 2022 school year, but it did not pass. So I didn't notice, but just before this meeting, I noticed that the bill made it out of committee, but it did not make it out of the floor of the House. So it could be revived if somebody were to signal to bring it back, but at this point, this bill is actually probably done for the session.
Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised.
All right, Jeff, I'll turn it to you.
Director Van Holt.
Right. And next up on the list, I just need to double check the list. House Bill 395, the charter schools. Just pull this up really fast. We have the charter school finance amendments by Representative Waldrop. This particular bill deals with, as the highlighted provision states, requiring a charter school to contract with a fiduciary before they can contract with an underwriter to bond to get bond financing. So essentially, it does a couple of things. You'll see here on line 60, it does require that a charter school, if they're going to issue bonds, they cannot issue the bonds through a conduit issuer unless they are in the state of Utah. They can use someone outside of the state of Utah if they get permission from their authorizer and permission from the Utah Charter School Finance Authority. And then as the bill goes on, it essentially just requires that before any underwriting goes forward, that the charter school hire a qualified municipal advisor, which would be the fiduciary, to help them along with the process before they go on into the underwriting for bond financing. That's essentially this bill. It also highlights on line 70 through 80, essentially, what a qualified municipal advisor would be, so who would qualify to be that.
Okay, we have a couple hands raised. Vice Chair Belknap.
Yeah, Jeff, is this something that maybe was brought up by Treasurer Damption? as being an issue? And does this solve the issue at hand with the exorbitant percentage amount that was being borrowed, the percent on the amount borrowed?
The assessment is yes, but I do not know exactly the inspiration behind the bill and if it solves the issue that it was raised, if it was from Treasurer Camshin. I don't know if anyone else online is familiar with the background on this one.
It's okay, Jeff. Chair, one more.
Yes.
And this municipal advisor, is this something that they will have to purchase? Is this a company? What is this? And are there several companies who do this type of thing, or are we looking at one company who does this?
I am not entirely sure how many companies would meet the criteria you see on line 70 through line 80. So I wouldn't be able to answer how many or if this is directed at providing business to one, but you will notice on line 78 that the charter school is not allowed to contract for services from an underwriter until they have entered into a contract for services from a qualified municipal advisor. So they do have to hire this individual or company before they can move forward with the underwriting process.
Chair, I can help to answer that question.
Board Member Frost, or not Board Member Frost. Sorry.
The Fiscal Policy Analyst Frost.
You keep demoting him.
Please don't. But Vice Chair Belknap, to answer your second question first, yes, there are multiple municipal firms that provide these services. I talked to them to try to assess what the cost would be, and it's in the fiscal note for charter schools, and it's a cost about 0.3% to 0.7% of the cost of financing. So if in the average would be, so for a $10 million bond would be $50,000 to hire the municipal, the MA, the municipal financial advisor.
That answer your question? Okay. Board Member Earl.
You're on mute.
Thank you. So it was a really good question. I hope I can do it just right now.
Here you go.
Well, my question has to do, Chair, with is this best practice already? Is this something that's already going on? And I'm just wondering if there's a need for it, or if it is something that, because it is best practice, it would be best implemented. I don't know if Jeff knows that the usage.
Scott Jones, can you answer that question?
I can try to answer the question, Chair.
Yeah, okay.
From my conversations, that this is best practice. These are qualified municipal advisors are required to act as fiduciaries for the charter schools, and I think that's the impetus of the bill. And it's my understanding that yes, it is coming from the treasurer's office, but again, that's what I've heard talking to folks, that I have not spoken to the treasurer's office specifically about it.
So can we ask staff to reach out to the treasurer's office to see if this is supported by the treasurer and the apparent, and then why, and then kind of get that back to us? Dale, is that something you can do, or Scott, Deputy Superintendent Jones?
We can do that, Chair Huntsman.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Board Member Hanson?
I just wondered on this one, Chair, and maybe this is for staff to answer, if there's a case study or some need, some problem that the bill is trying to solve. Have we seen a problem with a specific area?
Does staff want to take that question on?
I would probably not be the best person to answer that.
I could try. This is Angie.
Okay, Deputy Superintendent Stallings.
I believe there may have been some schools who obtained their bonding from outside of the state. And I believe they may have been very unfavorable conditions. And so there was a concern that the bond, that's my recollection. So I do think there was an instance or two that this bill is trying to address. So I apologize, but that's my recollection, is it is something that happened.
Yeah. Dr. Dixon, Superintendent.
Well, thank you, Chair Huntsman. Just for everybody's situational awareness, Scott had to jump on a call, so Deputy Jones I don't want anyone to think he's just being non-responsive. He's offline for a moment, and he would be the best to answer this question.
Okay.
So he could circle back to Board Member Hanson and answer your questions when he gets back on.
I think that would be good, Chair. I had one follow-up too that maybe he can be considering.
Okay. Follow-up.
And that's the harm from the unsavory bond companies. Was that only experienced by the charter, or does that get passed on to the general public, the students, or anyone else? So maybe we can get a response on both of those.
Okay. Member Moss.
Just going to say briefly, my understanding the State Charter School Board is still weighing this and asking questions. They've dealt with both sides of the issue here, those that have used what might be a best practice that's turned out well, and some that have run into problems. But I don't think they've taken a position on it for what that's worth, but they're still looking at it and trying to make sure that whatever's done serves charters to have an awareness, and get into a good deal up front, but not necessarily taking a position on this bill yet.
Member Earl, your hand's raised.
I guess this maybe question would take further analysis, but I wondered if there was a substantial cost increase and if there are those that have been taken advantage of by these companies. But I guess would need additional information to know that. So that's my question, or if it slows down the process to get a charter in place. But there may be long-term effects that also allow it to be not taken advantage of too, right? I mean, that's the point of this. So I just wondered I don't know if anybody has additional information, Chair, on that, and maybe Scott Jones does when he gets back on.
Okay.
Chair, I can answer part of that question.
Okay. A shot, Bill.
Okay, so Chair, Member Earl, I don't know if this will answer all of your question, and this is language that came to me from qualified municipal advisor firms, so I want to be upfront and transparent about that. But this was the language I was getting that that they, even though there's a cost, that the amount of underwriting has gone down since this became an SEC regulated role, and it used to be around 2%, and now it's about 1.5% to 1%, and that's only one of the costs of issuance. But that's their argument that essentially they pay for themselves. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's some additional information I received.
Thank you. I think that does.
Okay. Jeff, I want to take a break at 10 till, so let's a 10-minute break, and then we'll go to our budget priorities and update from Deputy Superintendent Jones. Then we'll get into action. So do you have another one that you want to bring up, or should we just go into our break?
I can do another one that's pretty quick, or we can go on break. Either way is fine.
Let's do another one. We're all here.
The next one is Senate Bill 211. This is the child care background check modification. Really what this bill does is kind of highlighted here up front, these three entities. So the Office of Licensing within the Department of Human Services, the State Board of Education and the Department of Health are allowed by this bill to share background information on an employee who's qualifying to be employed at a child care facility if one of the entities already has the background information on that person. So it just allows further down here that under certain circumstances, those 3 state agencies, which we were one of, could share information with one another on an individual's background check. That's
Okay.
it.
Questions on this? Board Member Moss, is your hand raised for this? Was it just up from before? Oh, okay, we're good. All right, we're not seeing questions on this. Thank you for sharing these reports. I guess Board Member Hanson.
Thanks. I just had a quick question on that background check, Bill. With that, the background checks are usually renewed every few years. They have to be so current within a certain amount of time. With the sharing of data and using a background check to have someone transfer into another area, I guess the intent of it, would that circumvent the expiration date, I guess, of the background check?
So we have, I think, staff that will respond to this. Aaliyah?
Hi, I'm Malia Height. I'm the Educator Licensing Coordinator. And essentially what this would do would be to clone the background check for each school or entity that is trying to register those fingerprints. And that each individual entity, whether it be USBE or a child care service provider, they would be re-enrolling that person on their own terms. So if somebody was a licensed educator and we had their background information on file here at USBE, we would re-enroll them every 5 years as long as their license was valid or they were an educator in our system. But if they had at the same time moved to a private child care facility, that would be an independent enrollment. We just wouldn't require the candidates to be fingerprinted to share those digital prints.
Do you have a follow-up, Board Member Hanson?
Just a quick one. So that would relate just to the fingerprints only. They would have to go back and do the other checks that are involved. Is that right?
Yeah, if this would be a digital file of their prints that then would be on file with the FBI, the candidate or the educator would have to sign a waiver in order to clone or share their background check information with another entity.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Board Member Lear?
This always raises a question for me, though. So, and this could be a question for Director Height too. Who would review the background checks when they came back with some concerns on them? Who would be responsible for that? Would it be the employer or would it be the USBE add to our burden without a fiscal note? Who would review those?
Director Height?
So whichever entity receives the hit on the background check would be the one to review it. If it's somebody who, because each entity has their own standard, for example, UPAC related to educator licensing, we look at things like expungements, but childcare facilities do not, but they also look at juvenile records. And so the FBI would independently report any relevant information to the monitoring entity. And so UPAC would only review items that were related to an educator's professional licensure. And if it was an employment thing, they would have to investigate that independently, because there's different standards for what is allowable and what is not allowable.
So can I follow up, Chair, just to make sure I understand? So that means that if they're professionally licensed, if it's an educator license, they would already be getting licensed periodically. So I don't, if I'm correct, this would not add additional names to our review. Is that right, Malia?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hyde. I'm not seeing any other hands on this, and thank you, Jeff, for your part in this. Board members, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then following that break, so be back on at 2:03, and then we'll turn the time over to Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones. So, have a safe break. Before we go into the budget priorities and an update, there were some questions on that last bill, and I just moved my notes. Was that 395? House
Yes.
bill?
Yes.
House Bill 395. Seems like there were several. Board Member Hanson had some. Maybe Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones, are you with us?
I am, sir. Yes, sir.
So some of the questions, and then we'll see if board members have some more on it. There was a question whether the treasurer was behind this, the state treasurer was behind this bill or not sponsoring, but behind this bill was questioned. One of the questions, is there significant savings, or is there savings with this bill? And I thought there was one more.
So Chair, if I may, I think I know what the questions are.
All right.
Okay. To the first question, yes, the treasurer is behind the bill. To the second question, yes, our experience is that bond financing that's done outside of the state is higher. The costs are higher to the school. And I think the third question was, were there problems in the past? Yes, along the lines of my response to the second question is, we're making a concerted effort to ensure that, the financing process with the school is accurate and tight, and it does result in savings to the school. Also, concerns in the past about qualifications of municipal advisors, or who's advising the particular schools are driving this, to my understanding. I haven't had a chance to circle back to the state treasurer though yet on what are the consequences if a school goes outside of the state. So I plan to do that either today or tomorrow. So I should be able to advise on that question as well. Subject to any further questions related to HB 395, Chair, that concludes my answers.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'm looking for hands raised.
So it's Scott Hanson. Just to follow up to my question.
Yes.
I wondered, and Deputy Superintendent Jones may be the right one to answer this, if the harm, it seems to me from what I've heard, would be to the business entity, the charter school. Does the harm extend further than that, or are we just making a legislative effort to make the charter school be better businessmen?
Yeah, Chair, I'm sorry, I might not have understood the question. Can you repeat the question? I couldn't hear him very well.
What? Board Member Hanson, your question again?
I'll try again. Can you hear me?
I can. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the question is, if we go outside the state, we may see higher financing costs on a bond. And it seems to me that's a business decision. If the harm is just localized to the charter school, if they have higher costs and they budget those higher costs and deal with those, that would be their business decision. So are we trying to avoid some other harm, or are we just trying to make the charter schools better business people, trying to regulate that decision?
Yeah, we're really trying to be supportive of the process. We do, I think you can see that we do support local decision making. I mean, ultimately, I think to your point, Board Member Hanson, it is a local decision in the business, but this bill from a Utah Charter School Financing Authority perspective would allow for us to mitigate against risks, of them going outside and incurring, costs. But then also, if you see, on line 74 through, I think it's roughly 77, that, there's a requirement that the municipal advisors, those that are advising the charter school, ultimately on, cost and expense to that are qualified and able to do so. We're really wanting to support the process and do what's in the best interest of the charter school, both financially and ultimately long-term with the bond process. That's my takeaway from this bill. Chair Huntsman, did I answer Board Member Hanson's question satisfactorily?
Let me ask, do you have a follow-up, Board Member Hanson?
No, I appreciate that. It sounds like we are just trying to establish some guardrails to mitigate risk in the bonding process, if I understood correctly.
Yeah. Chair Huntsman, yes. That's the short answer is yes. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So Deputy Superintendent Jones, let's go to our budget priorities, or do you have an update on where things are at? And
yes, Chair Huntsman and members of the board. So Deputy Superintendent of Operations Scott Jones. Our update is just along the lines of revenue. So since even our last update, really the only thing that's changed is we've got a more solidified picture of revenue. And at this time, Chair Huntsman, if you'll turn it over to Del Frost, Fiscal Policy Analyst, he'll just really talk to where we're at as far as revenue goes and what the so what is of the application of revenue to our requests, keeping in mind also all of the demands statewide or requests statewide for use of this revenue. Chair, would you please recognize Mr. Frost?
Are you ready to report on this?
I am. Thank you, Chair Huntsman. Dale Frost, Fiscal Policy Analyst for the board. Jeff, can you go to the other EAC document? So what you're seeing on your screen, this is a backup for you if you have more specific questions, but I'm really going to just walk you through this other document. We, late last week, and I actually saw it early Monday morning, this was posted to EAC's website, and the EAC, the Executive Appropriations Committee, is meeting tomorrow at 6 p.m. and they are likely going to discuss these revenues and maybe act on budget items. I have not seen that on the agenda. I haven't seen the agenda, and I haven't seen those items. But this is the first concrete information for updated revenues. So if you can see here, the big the highlight I wanted to bring to you is that the news is good news. We have about $420 million in additional revenue available than was projected in December. 315 of that is one time, 112 is ongoing. Jeff, can you scroll down? So to the bottom, there are many lines and changes here, and I can answer specific questions, but I just want to draw your attention to the bottom here. So it says available revenue post set-asides. You'll see 1.35 billion one time and 200 million ongoing. And I want to stress that this is statewide. This is not just public education. Another interesting data point, budget.utah.gov has an article that discusses when new revenues come out. They specifically, to give some context to these numbers here, they said that the total request received by subcommittees is nearly 2 billion one time and 400 million ongoing. And so the news is good news, but we can't fund everything that every subcommittee wants. That subject to any board member questions, that was the information I was planning to cover in this presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from board members? I'm not seeing any hands raised, Dale. Thank you. Oh, here we go. Vice Chair Davis.
Dale, would you mind repeating those very last two numbers that you just shared, what the total requests turned out to be?
Sure, and I'll compare them to the revenues that you see here. So if you see on your screen, you see 1.35 billion one time. From what I saw on budget.utah.gov, the number they gave was just under 2 billion in total requests. And so, you know, if all of that revenue were to be allocated towards spending rather than tax cuts or other things, and those are the difficult decisions legislators need to make, you could fund, you know, 50-60% of the one-time requests. And then so the amount on the ongoing request is 400 million, and 200 million, 205 million is available statewide for allocation if legislators choose to allocate all of it. Does that answer your question, Vice Chair Davis?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Frost, I'm not seeing any other hands raised. Did you have more in your presentation?
No, that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Superintendent Jones.
Chair Huntsman, thank you. That concludes our update on the requests for the 2021 session.
Okay. Thank you. So I've had a few board members ask me, and this is a question for Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones. What's next after all the process that we've been through and we've got through? Well,
right.
They're going through now executive approach and.
Yeah, Chair Huntsman, if I may, that's it. You know, Dale mentioned that EAC is meeting tomorrow. There's another meeting scheduled for Monday right now. You know, all subject to change. All eyes are on the EAC meetings because that's where, you know, we advised the board and provided you with what the Public Education Appropriations Committee had recommended to the Executive Appropriations Committee at a prior Executive Appropriations Committee meeting. We've also advised that, you know, anytime there is such a change like we're seeing here with revenue, that, and you know, again, this is a good change. You know, I mean, it's more than was anticipated or planned for in the past. However, you know, to Dale's point, there's all sorts of demands. You know, anything is possible, everything is not. You know, this amount of money is available to the state. So next big milestone, if you will, in this overall process is the EAC meeting tomorrow or Monday, you know, depending on when they get to the Public Education Appropriations Committee requests. Once we see those, then it's a matter of just, you know, reconciling what EAC motions take place and then ensuring that we're all coming out of the session with a clear understanding of the appropriations for public education. Then, of course, is this thing called the Bill of Bills, right? It's the supplemental funding, if you will, to public education that, you know, that's part of this process. Once that's published, and, you know, we look closely at that, and we typically in the past have been able to put that Bill of Bills in front of you or in front of the board on that Thursday. A little different this year. Most years, or since I've been here, the legislative session ends on a Thursday. It's scheduled to end on a Friday. So, you know, we might be able to do it, but I'm not sure. I don't think you guys are scheduled to meet, you know, next Thursday, are you? I don't think, yeah. So what we would do is we try to keep you informed electronically. Then, of course, we'd roll everything up. The plan is to roll everything up with you see exactly where we landed funding wise in your March 11th meeting, Thursday, March 11th meeting. Chair Huntsman, have I adequately described where we're at in the process and what to expect or the way ahead?
Thank you very much. You have. And so it's all about managing expectations. And so you've covered it very well. So we'll be watching tomorrow and Monday, and we'll watch for your updates also.
Right. And if I may close, Chair Huntsman, board members are great. They're contacting me, you know, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you have any other questions beyond what I, you know, stated today, then please don't hesitate to call. I'll answer your questions to the best I can. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Vice Chair Belknap.
I was just waiting to move on to the next section. Are you there, Chair?
I called it out. I've got to write these names down as I saw them, or someone will correct me and say somebody's hand went up before someone else's. So, let me get this done. Okay, we're moving into the next on our actual motion on legislation. Before I call in on you, I've still got hands popping up. Okay, Vice Chair Belknap.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move that we support HB 425, HB 421, HB 430, and HB 402.
These are motions of support. Is there a second?
Point of order, Chair,
Yes.
in two ways. I would like to know the titles to each of those, and then I'd also probably like to have them, separated once we see the titles.
So, Board Member Lear, what will happen is we can't separate. We have a motion and coming out, so I can add that clarity into that motion, but I don't have a second. And then there is that the opportunity to divide.
Divide as opposed to separate. Yes, sir.
But I'm not there yet.
I'll
Okay.
second that. This is Board Member Straight.
Board Member Straight. And we have a second. We have a motion and a second. Vice Chair Belknap, do you want to speak to your motion?
Yes, the reason I have put these four together are these are ones that we have requested as a board, that we put forward, that we wanted a legislature to bring forward for us. And that's why I clumped them together. I don't know if that's such a good word to say, but thank you.
It's as good as separate. I'm fine. I'll withdraw the motion to divide, Chair. I just wanted to make sure which ones they were.
Yeah. So I haven't recognized that yet, but so I do have, before I put this to discussion, in this order of hands, we'll go, we've got Vice Chair Belknap, Member Straight, Earl, Lear, Hart. So now I'd like you to remove your hands, and this is just speaking to the motion. This will just make it a lot easier to me. Is there anybody discussion to the motion? So I'm not seeing any hands raised. So, Vice Chair Davis.
Yeah, are we speaking to Board Member Belknap's motion now?
That is correct. That is a
Okay.
motion on the table.
Okay. I would like to speak to the motion. I did just, not that this necessarily matters, but I did just get a text from Jennifer Lambert, who works with our state charter school board. And she said that 425 is now on the agenda. It's on the agenda for tomorrow morning. So that is out. And I asked her if the state charter school board supports that. And she said it wasn't numbered, so they hadn't taken a position, but she knows that their leadership supports that. And then speaking towards intensive services pilot program, this was our third priority, and it was also on the governor's budget request list. And just as a quick, speaking toward the motion as per the need, students with intensive services are those perhaps that are medically fragile, needing nursing care, or in wheelchairs needing occupational or physical therapy, or needing sign language interpreters. Sometimes these costs can be upwards of $60,000 per year. District receives one general WPU plus a 1.53 add-on for special education, which equals about $9,000+, but they cannot request any reimbursements for these students for the expenditures they spend on these high-cost students until after districts and charters, until after they have spent $23,000 as per what we understand right now. Our federal allotment is only $1.8 million. Our previous allotment statewide was $2.8 million. With the increase of $1 million per year in this ask, it would, when you combine the state and the federal, it would meet about 48% of the requests. For example, last year that we had 12 million in requests. So it certainly doesn't meet the need, but it would definitely help. The last thing is, the reason a new bill is coming forward is because in statute, the old formula was inequitable because small districts and charters were not receiving a fair portion of the intensive services funds. And as Angie indicated, we have in our rule change. So every applicant will get a little base portion of the fund, and then only the small charters and rural districts are allowed to add in the cost of setting. So that will help them to receive more intensive services funds. And then the last concern was there were LEAs that had over the 20% carry forward allowable in board rule. And we have also, a handful of months ago in our new board rule, made it so LEAs are ineligible to apply for this money if they are over the 20% allowable in board rule. So I support the motion, and I'll let someone else talk about 430 and 402. Thanks.
Board Member Straight.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As a new member of the board, I just want to honor what has been done to put these bills forward. I know that they align with our strategic objectives, so I look forward to this process in the coming year. So I put my support behind this because it aligns with what we're trying to accomplish as a board. Thank you.
And all right, I'm not seeing any other discussion. So the motion before the board is that the board support for these are all House bills, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Support House Bill 425 Education Monitoring and Funds Management Amendments. Support House Bill 421 Intensive Services Pilot Program. Support House Bill 430 Student Safety Education for Parents Amendment. Support House Bill 402 School Transportation Funding Amendments. Board members, at this time, please vote. It appears the voting is complete and the voting is unanimous.
I noticed that Member Cannon's name is on the list. Could we move her up?
Yeah.
Thank you. It's tough to track it, so thank you for your help. Okay, Member Straight, did you have your hand up for a different motion?
Yes, thank you. May I proceed?
Yeah, you're up.
Thank you. So I motion that we support House Bill 381.
Okay, we'll put the name.
Belknap.
We have a motion and a second. You want to speak to your motion? Member Stray.
Yes, I see this as a real opportunity to support people who come into the profession, sometimes even by accident, and learn that they absolutely love what they're doing. And this provides financial resources to get there. It also is, we need to promote people in education. We need to promote people going into education as a profession. And I know that up in my area, that there is widespread support in regards to this, and especially and in rural areas as well. So I see this as a real positive. Thank you.
Okay. Discussion to the motion. Board Member Lear.
Yes, I am cautious about this, but I do support it. I think there are some concerns, but one of the things I like about it is even though it takes more money, it supports students through the traditional teacher preparation program. And I think there is strength in that. I think those are strong programs. They're well conceived. They provide the necessary support for teachers. And I know that it's more expensive for a teacher to go through that program. And I know that it may not be the only thing that this bill would support, but I like that it would provide support to those traditional teacher preparation programs. So I am cautiously in support of this.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone that's, in an effort to expedite the discussion and that, because there's still 3 other board members that may have proposed motion and we're going to end at 3. So I'm going to talk really fast, but I'm not, we at 3 o'clock, we've got to end. And so is there anyone that's opposed this that needs to speak in opposition to this? Member Earl.
It's not the idea that I'm in opposition to. I just am concerned that as we as a board and as the legislature begin to regulate this, I think it's going to change the dynamics of this. And I just would say, we need to cautiously proceed. I think it becomes, once again, more of a regulated in place of, right now, the things I'm seeing are incredible. And it's exactly what we've been saying here. The things that they're doing, even what board member Lear had just stated. Anyways, I just am concerned that as we get into this business, that we're going to be regulating this instead of allowing the creativity that's going on in current districts as well as with universities. There's some great things. They're lowering tuition. They're doing all kinds of things to make these kind of things work, and they're doing it well. I just don't know that this is the way we should be going. So those are just my thoughts. I think the intention is great. I think the idea is awesome. I just don't know if this is the best way to accomplish this.
Okay. I'm not seeing any other hands raised just and debate on this motion. I'll restate the motion and then we'll vote. The motion before the board is to support HB 381, Grow Your Own Teacher and School Counselor Pipeline Program. Board members at this time, please vote. My motion passes. I see 2 no votes. Member Klein and Member Earl. So the motion passes. Member Earl, did you have a motion that you wanted to make?
Yes, I want to put up House Bill 38. This is school technology amendments. Anyways, if someone wanted to second that.
In support of House Bill 38.
38, school technology amendments.
Is there a second? I'm not hearing a second. Sorry, Board Member Earl, we don't have a second. We'll move to Move to the
That's all
next.
right, thank you.
Member Lear.
I'm sorry, I was going to second that, but my computer kicked off and I'm getting back on.
So who is going to?
This is Natalie Klein.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion. We have a second. Discussion to the motion. Board Member Earl.
Yes, this is, this actually just helps in keeping databases clean that come into our schools. The PTA has spoken for this. There are a number of, so specifically through UEN, making sure that those databases that are coming into schools and accessed within our public schools for our children are clean, especially where we're doing online, a lot more online, and that we're accessing those databases that we're already paying for. So this is just, I just think this is a great effort to support this. And sorry, I don't know if maybe we didn't talk about this. Angie, did we? Sorry, board. Maybe we need a few minutes to have a little discussion about this before voting.
Okay, Board Member Lear.
That's what I was going to ask for. Who's the sponsor? Tell me about the bill. I can't keep all these technology bills straight. Thanks.
Deputy Superintendent Stallings, can you bring the bill up really quick and give a quick overview of it and the fiscal note?
I'd be happy to, Chair. Thank you. So HB 38 school technology amendments, I believe we briefly went over it in a prior meeting because it is on our list of bills that were reviewed in a prior meeting. It looks like there is a first substitute that has not been adopted yet. I was just going to check quickly where it's at in the process. It's on the second calendar in the Senate, so it has passed the House. Representative Siegmiller is the sponsor of the bill. What I remember from the discussion of this bill early in the session is that many of, if not all of the requirements and elements in this bill have already been incorporated by UETN into their processes. And Patty Norman, Deputy Superintendent of Student Achievement, could also help verify that and provide any information that I miss. So Patty, be on deck. But it essentially provides and requires that digital resources that are purchased or licensed by UETN and offered to students in public schools meet certain criteria. And again, I believe that all of the requirements UETN currently has that they've addressed within their own agency, so to speak. So I was just going to quickly look at the fiscal note. The fiscal note for the first substitute is showing 0 impact. My guess is it is the same for the bill, but I'm having a hard time finding that right. Oh, there it is. It's also 0. Hopefully that answered your questions. And again, I think Patty Norman might be able to fill in if I missed something important.
Deputy Superintendent Norman, was there anything missed in that briefing? Quick briefing. Are you with us? Maybe, okay, let's go to other discussion. Board Member Klein.
So yes, this bill, I've been working on it and following it since it was first introduced in the Judiciary Committee last fall. What it does is holds the database companies accountable. So if there are inappropriate images or pornography found on it, it requires a process to alert the database company, and they have to resolve it or they don't get payment for our services. And the important thing about this, it's important to understand that the databases are like a black box on the internet. They cannot be filtered by the web. Everything in the database is put there intentionally by the database company. And they were being sold to the schools as a safe place for kids to search and do their homework on. And that is just simply not the case. There's all kinds of filthy material on there, adult content, links to websites outside of the database, to pedophilia websites. The whole gamut is there. And I actually put out a petition and survey and had thousands of people sign it, and hundreds of people give their own experiences of their children being exposed to this on the school computers, and the havoc, the terrible consequences that these kids deal with for years and years, with addiction and other issues that they face as a result. So this simply puts the onus back on the databases to actually make sure that it is clean, and puts teeth in it so that there's a way to make sure that happens. The other thing about this bill is, or the database companies, they're receiving lots of money from the schools to pay for this service. They also receive lots of money from the adult content publishers, and they promise those publishers that they will get that content to their target audience, which is the kids. So they were getting money. Database companies were getting a lot of money on both ends. Really, child exploitation at its finest. So this is a way to keep the kids safe, and it has sailed through every level because it's such a no-brainer and it's got bipartisan support. So I would recommend that we adopt or support this bill. Thank you.
Okay, we're discussion to the motion on the HB 38 school technology amendments. Board Member Moss.
Thank you. Just a quick question. What I noticed in this is the teeth, the opportunity to withhold funding and also submit a report to the interim committee. And Deputy Superintendent Stallings mentioned that UATN has already taken action. Do you know if the action they've taken includes those types of kind of compliance measures, the teeth that are in this bill?
I apologize. I do not know. Chair, I don't know if you want to see if Jeff, actually, he may know more about this bill. I believe he was the one who reviewed it originally.
Jeff Van Holden, are you available?
I am. And I don't have a direct answer for that question. We did reach out to UETN to ask them about this bill, and they did indicate that they were already doing everything in the bill. At that time, however, it was the, I guess this is the original bill still. It hasn't been substituted, but we didn't inquire further as to what they meant or if withholding funds was something that they were referring to. They said they're already doing that, or doing what the bill says generally. Probably not a great answer, but you know.
Thank you. Fair enough. And I'm in favor of this bill because it's got those teeth in it. Thanks, Chair.
Board Member Lear.
And I'm certainly not in favor of pedophilia websites, but I do wonder about the efficacy of a bill that doesn't do anything other than what's already being done. Is there one new thing that anyone knows for sure is being accomplished by this bill?
Chair, can I speak to this?
Yeah, brief. Yeah, if you can.
Okay, I'll try to be brief. I do know that I don't think the financial accountability was previously done. From my understanding, it was they would take sites down if people reported it. But this puts the accountability in there with the E-rate. It also forces them to start making some choices instead of just waiting for someone. They're proactive instead of reactive, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Okay, Board Member Hanson.
Thank you. Just like to speak in favor of this one. I think putting the onus back on the companies that we contract with to do this, instead of us having to monitor and raise things, I think that just makes sense. And I think that the bill, the actual having this in code would probably be required for us to take the kind of action that we need to withhold funds and that sort of thing. So it seems like it makes sense to me. I'd also, Chair, like to get on your list for another motion.
I think we're running out of time.
Put me on the end.
Okay. Member Straight.
As a teacher, I've used these resources. I've had students use these resources. Utah Online Library, especially, an absolutely excellent resource. We had part of that shut down 2 years ago when we were doing history fair, and that was a negative. I see great effort on the part of all parties to make certain that what our children are seeing is appropriate. Although sometimes based on one group of individuals versus another view of what is inappropriate becomes a challenge. So anyway, thank you.
Vice Chair Davis?
I'm in support of the motion, but I am just in queue if we have an end.
What? I didn't get the last part, Vice Chair Davis. You're muted.
She just wants to be put on the list, Chair Huntsman.
Well, it's not going to be my list. It's going to be yours because I have a meeting at 3 o'clock.
Well, our meeting ends at 3, so.
And I'm going to jump off a couple. I've got to be logged into that meeting. Okay. I'm not seeing any other discussion. So the motion before the board is that the board support HB 38 school technology amendments. Board members, at this time, please vote. So the motion passes and it looks like there was one no vote. Is that correct?
Board Member Straight?
Yes. Okay. Board Member Lear?
Thank you. I have a motion on HB 382 to support the bill. Can I speak to that?
That's HB 380.
Oh, 2 is the one about, I don't remember the exact name, and I'm so frustrated when we don't give names. It's the online education fund that would provide, it's Representative Birkeland, it would supply a small base amount for small LEAs and charter schools to access for payment rather than taking their WPU.
Online course access amendments.
Thank you, Angie.
Do we have a second?
Second, Board Member Booth.
Okay. You want to speak to the motion?
I do. I sort of did earlier. I have worked with small LEAs who are very frustrated that they lose their LEA, their WPU for students taking these courses. The courses do not have real strong data behind them, but the LEAs have been willing to support their students. They are also now required to waive the fees for these courses, and they're required to provide supervision for the students if they want to stay in the school, despite the fact that they're losing their WPU and they are waiving their fees. And so this is a small effort to help small LEAs with the disproportionate cost of these courses. And it would go a long way, especially until we have strong data about the depth and efficiency of this program and the instructional strength of it. This would go a long way to encouraging support by LEAs to support their students who take these courses. So I think it would just help the situation a lot.
Okay. We have a motion to support HB 382 online course access amendment. Discussion to the motion. I'm seeing none. So at this time, please vote. Again, the motion that's on the floor is in support. House Bill 382 online access amendment. It appears the voting is complete and the motion passes unanimously. Is that how you see it, Vice Chair Belknap? Okay, thank you. Next was Member Hart.
I would like to make a motion to oppose I'm sorry, I'm looking to see if it's House or Senate. House Bill 428. I'm concerned. I very much support local control.
Second. Let's get a second.
Oh,
Let's speak
my
to-
bad.
You're fine. We're good. Okay.
Board Member Earl, I second that.
House Bill 428, Public Education, Governance, and Appeal. Do we have a second? The second was Board Member Earl, I think. Do I heard?
Yes.
Okay. Member Hart, do you want to speak to your motion?
Sure, just very quickly. I just believe in that local control. And secondly, I believe that educators should make the decisions about education, or at least have more of a seat at that table. I'm afraid of giving that away. We need to have a capable hand leading those ships. In the interest of time, I'll answer questions, but turn it over to anyone else that wants to provide input.
We did have a part of our discussion.
Yes.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion to the motion? Board Member Earl?
Yeah, I do agree that we should oppose this. I think it moves that key element of government from those that are elected by their communities, and moves it to somewhere else. And while it may be restrictive in the areas they can do this, I think there's been enough concern about different approaches that different districts have done throughout the state that I think this would just lead to a lot of problems within our system. You'd be having one review after another going on. And so I don't think this is the best approach to this.
Okay. Any other discussion to the motion? Seeing none, we're going to, the motion before the board is to oppose House Bill 428, Public Education, Governance, and Appeal. Board members at this time, please vote. This is to oppose. I don't know if I saw Member Moss. Did you see that?
No. Board Member Moss?
I'll abstain.
Okay, the motion passes. Board Member Moss abstained. There was no votes. Okay. Board Member Hanson. Board Member Hanson.
There we go. Motion to support 395. This is the appointing a fiscal or a fiduciary on the bonding process.
Okay. To support, we have a motion to support House Bill 395. That's the Charter School Finance Amendments. It's what it's titled. Is there a second?
Second, Lear.
We have a motion and a second. You want to speak to your motion?
Just briefly, I think that we had a pretty robust discussion, but I think we have seen problems in this area. It makes sense to keep things close at hand as far as you'll be issuing bonds, and also to put those guardrails in place.
Okay, discussion to the motion. Board member, there's your hand raised for.
It is, but I also want to be in the queue. But I also wanted to mention that I think this also helps the system generally, not just these individual charter schools, because we've certainly seen schools close that impact the full system. And I would like to protect the system from that closure, disruption, financial consequence to the extent we can reasonably. And I think this is a very restrained attempt to do that. Thanks.
Okay. Member Moss?
I'm just going to explain that I'll abstain on this one because I haven't heard a definitive weighing in from the charter board, and I know they're wrestling with this issue that's complicated. So thanks for letting me speak.
Okay. Not seeing any. Board Member Earl? You're muted.
Sorry, I did the opposite I wanted to do. Just real quick, I just feel like I'm going to vote yes on this, but I do have concerns about the continuing to force do this. And it would seem like this would just be best practice, but perhaps it's been not used. So those are my comments.
Okay. Vice Chair Davis?
You know, I don't know a lot about this either, but I do remember having several conversations with Treasurer Damshin, and he has been concerned about the across the board economic viability when there are some ups and downs with bonding, and wanting that landscape to become more solid for our charter schools. I am guessing that's where he's coming from. I hate to speak for him, but that's the only thing I've heard on the issue.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands raised. The motion before the board is to support House Bill 395, Charter School Finance Amendment. Board members at this time, please vote. Okay, the motion passes, one abstain, which was Member Moss, and one no vote, Member Klein. Is that how you see it, Vice Chair Davis?
Yes, I saw it.
Okay.
Do you want me to take the next one, Chair Huntsman? We have 5 minutes. I believe the Vice Chair Davis is the next one on your list, yes?
And then after that, Lear, if you can squeeze it
If
in.
we can squeeze them in. Okay, thank you, Chair Huntsman.
Okay, thanks to all of you, but I have a legislative meeting scheduled at 3.
Okay, Vice Chair Davis.
Yes, thank you. I move that we support HB 340 Mathematics and Science Opportunities for Students and Teachers program.
You went on mute, so hold on.
Did you hear the motion?
Yes, we heard the motion.
Okay, I'd like to speak to the motion if there's a second.
I will
second.
Second, was that Lear?
Yes.
Second by Board Member Lear. Vice Chair Davis, would you like to speak to that?
This is a program that initiated out of our office, and we've heard from several people in the field. It went away when COVID hit, and then once we determined we could bring some things back, we voted to bring it back. It wasn't prioritized in our top 10 priorities for budgeting, but I do think we've heard from a lot of folks. It allows our math and science teacher opportunities to work for extra dollars, not just get a stipend for scarcity, but to work for extra dollars. We've heard from a teacher who said that these funds have provided a math lab after school for their striving students. She said it's been so great for students trying to keep up on math. We've heard from a charter director who said they were able to hire an extra teacher to provide a little more equity as far as more math subjects to be taught for students. Anyway, we heard from a BA of a large district who said this was the best program he'd seen come out of our office for kids. So I think it does some great things for kids, and I move that we support the bill since we did ask for it to get made again.
Do we have other questions or about this bill? I have one, Vice Chair Davis, and maybe it shouldn't come to you, but oh wait, Board Member Hart has a question. I'll go to you first, Board Member Hart.
I actually just wanted to second that. This program, even in my own school, I pay $5,000 and 5 or 6 teachers a year. And it serves, it provides hundreds of hours of tutoring. And it's one of those, what I call boots on the ground programs, get to the actual ground level. And it's one of those workhorses of a program. So just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Member Hart. I have a question. Is this a grant program, number one? And also is a qualifying grant, first of all. Second, I haven't heard any discussion on science opportunities. I only hear it being math. So can somebody help me? I don't know if that's Jennifer Thronson, Angie.
I'm happy to help if Cammie's not available. I'm ready.
Thank you.
Amazing to be able to stay connected all the way down. I couldn't do that before.
Scott, you're not on mute.
Okay, this is Jennifer Thronson, Director of Teaching and Learning. And for the MOST program, it is a competitive grant award. So they will submit applications, and based on the quality of those applications and how well they align with what the legislation is requiring, allowing them to do, we select LEAs to be the grantees of that come to the board for approval. And Board Member Belknap, can you repeat this?
And it's okay. I just wanted to make sure that science teachers know that this is an opportunity too.
Yes, we have plenty of opportunities within the current MOST program, which was repealed, but previously there were science, there's STEM clubs, robotics, different science classes offered that in rural schools, for example, wouldn't typically be offered because they're able to afford adding additional course offerings through paying for FTE for teachers. So science is heavily participatory in the program as well.
Thank you, Dr. Thronson. Board Member, Vice Chair Davis.
Yeah, I apologize. I only mentioned math, but it is math and science. We did have survey feedback with information from students, teachers, and principals who have been participating in the program, and they were pretty heavily in both math and science. So I appreciate, I'm sorry I only said math.
That's okay. All right. I don't see any other hands except Vice Chair Davis's, who I think she doesn't want to say anything. Okay. So the motion before the board is to support HB, is it HB 340? Mathematics and science opportunities for students?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Please vote. Ms. Lorraine, that voting is unanimous with Chair Huntsman not voting. And it is now 3:01 today. So I appreciate everybody sticking out for 3 hours today and for all the hard work. So we will consider this meeting adjourned.